Welcome back to another episode of Wiltfong's Whiparound. I am your host, Steve Wiltfong. Behind the scenes, we have producer Chris Belcher. We have Jason on the switcher. We have another exciting show. Thanks for tuning in and reading us across the various 24/7 sports platforms. And a couple of the sites that are rocking and rolling right now, our Ohio State site, bucknuts.com, and our Penn State site, Lions247. As those two programs have shot up to number 2 and number 3, respectively, in the 24/7 Sports Composite team recruiting rankings. Notre Dame still holding on to the number 1 spot. James Franklin looking for his third top 10 recruiting class since coming to Happy Valley. They finished number 8 a cycle ago. Now up to number 3 after landing defensive end Tamarian Parker, a top 100 recruit out of Phoenix City, Alabama, Central High School there. Took his official visit over the weekend and fell in love. It was his first time in Happy Valley, but blown away by just the environment and the atmosphere, the culture, the coaching staff, Coach Franklin, Coach Scott, what Penn State's building, their track record at defensive end. Penn State, they had the most players drafted in the Big Ten last year. Now, James Franklin, it's a program that he's had 3 New Year's Six Bowls. He's won a Big Ten title. There's a lot of exciting things happening at Penn State, and they go out and add Tamarian Parker to a class, growing this thing to 14 commits. They also secured defensive lineman Tyreek Blanding from New York earlier in late last week. So Penn State, they have some juice on the trail right now. And I'm going to kind of run down some official visitors that they've had or are going to have that I think that they're in a good spot for. Cameron Seldon is a player we love at 24/7 Sports from Heathersville, Virginia. He's taking his official visit this weekend. Tennessee and Maryland are 2 others in the thick of it, but Penn State, they've really been in it for him. They've had him on campus before for a game. This will be an opportunity for him to come in and get an in-depth look at the campus. The 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball reads Florida for running back Trayon Webb. Penn State's got a great shot to land him. Him and his dad were blown away by their visit earlier this month. I think Penn State's in excellent position for the number 5 running back in the country. We're going to talk running backs a little bit more later in the show. But you got Tamir Robinson, a 4-star edge rusher, who Penn State could be in the lead for. And I do think Penn State's the one to beat for one of the most athletic linebackers in the country, Tony Rojas, out of Fairfax, Virginia. Georgia has made that one interesting, but Penn State, the team to watch. And one more name, 4-star safety King Mack, 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball, favoring King Mack. Penn State already has a commitment from his teammate, Conrad Hussey, who was arguably the best defensive back at the Overtime OT7 event in Las Vegas last week. Now they're trending for King Mack. And as I segue this into Ohio State, one of the more pivotal recruiting battles that's going on in the Midwest is Jason Moore, a top 100 player out of Hyattsville, DeMatha, a defensive lineman who's wrapping up his official visits. He's at Ohio State this weekend. He's been at Michigan. He's been at Notre Dame. A lot of people have thought this was a Notre Dame-Penn State battle. So Penn State in the thick of that one. The Buckeyes, they go out and land 2 more 5-star receivers to the stable as they just reload at that position, and they're going to have a couple more first-rounders coming out of there, led by Jackson Smith and the Jigba, after having the first 2 receivers taken off the board, really first 3 if you count Jameson Williams, which I do, off the board in this last draft. No surprise that Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes are in the fold. And I still have my crystal ball on Ohio State for Noah Rogers, and they're also in it for Rico Walker, who they're battling Notre Dame for. But Ohio State's going into a big recruiting weekend this weekend. They have the number 1 safety in the country, Caleb Downs, in town. He's fresh off a terrific visit at Alabama, and he's been to Alabama several times. These are the 2 programs that I think are at the top of the list. You also have Georgia, and you also have Notre Dame in the mix, but Alabama, Nick Saban's track record as a head coach and as a defensive backs coach has really stood out to Caleb and his dad and his family. The academics setup at Alabama really spoke to Caleb's mom over the weekend, but Nick Saban spent a lot of one-on-one time with Caleb Downs. The Downs family and Nick Saban, they hung out over karaoke. They breakfast together at Saban's house. They ate dinner together at Saban's house. And they talked business. They talked entrepreneur things. They really got to know Coach Saban this past weekend, and Alabama really put their best foot forward for Caleb Downs. Ohio State's been a team that's been trending. He's a personality fit at Ohio State. He really gets along with the guys. Coach Perry Eliano leading the charge there for Caleb Downs. It's a big visit in for the battle of the number one recruiting class, one that Ohio State may need to have if they're ultimately going to finish number one. But they got Troy Bowles, the number 2 linebacker in the country, coming in. They're battling Georgia for him, among others. Oklahoma's in there. Like I said, Jason Moore. Justice Haynes is a running back they've been in the middle of it for. They battle Georgia and Alabama. A lot of people think it may be tough to get the Georgia legacy away from the Bulldogs, and Georgia's really only recruiting 2 running backs right now, Justice Haynes and Richard Young. But Justice Haynes has been to Ohio State several times, and Tony Alford's been recruiting him and would love to add Justice Haynes to Mark Fletcher, who's already in the fold. But John Walker has Ohio State crystal ball action, a top 247 defensive lineman. Oleus Alinen's an offensive lineman that's been super high on Ohio State. I like the Buckeyes for Kayan Lee. Deron Reed, I'm now riding with LSU. Can Ohio State flip it back for the 4-star defensive lineman? And then Rico Flores, I like the Irish, but I also like the Irish a lot more when I thought Ohio State was in great spot for Noah Rogers. Now I think for that final Ohio State spot, is it Rico Flores? Is it Noah Rogers? Notre Dame has certainly done a great job there, the one to beat coming into the visit. But, we'll see how that plays out. But Ohio State, I like where they stand with safety Jaden Bonzu. For 4-star athlete Jermaine Matthews, those guys have visited earlier this month. So Ohio State also trying to flip 4-star quarterback Austin Novosad from Baylor. So those are some of the main players out there for Ohio State and Penn State as they attack the race for number one. And then for Notre Dame, they had some visitors this past weekend, and I still love where the Irish stand with Jaden Greathouse and Micah Bell. Those are 2 guys that I already have crystal ball to the Irish, feeling really good about as they move forward, along with 4-star Christian Gray, a top 100 consensus recruit by the Composite, who is making his decision on CBS Sports HQ over the 4th of July. Like the Irish there. And then, as I said, had the pick for Rico Flores. And they could land Ronan Hannafin, an athlete recruit from Massachusetts who's at Alabama this weekend and also high on Clemson, but been a lot of Notre Dame buzz around that. Is there a team buzzing more, Chris and Jason, than Louisville? The Cardinals. They're on the nation's number 11 class. And yesterday they landed a commitment from the number 1 running back in the country, Reuben Owens. He took his official visit over the weekend. When I talked to Reuben Owens in the week leading up to his visit, he had a relationship with Pierce Clarkson, Louisville's quarterback commit 4-star from California. And that was really the reason why he was going out to Louisville, to check it out, because Pierce Clarkson, the best peer recruiter in this 2023 class. But Reuben had Louisville sitting number 4. He had TCU in the 1 hole, A&M in the 2, Texas in the 3, and Louisville in the 4 going into the visit. Now, we all know that just because a prospect says that doesn't mean that's exactly how it lined up. But I do know he had a great official to TCU. My prediction was on Texas A&M until Monday, when I got tipped off that Louisville had fast emerged as the one to get, and that a commitment was imminent. And Reuben Owens actually announced his commitment before he even talked to Satterfield and company. He committed and then had a great conversation with them afterwards. But, they liked the way Louisville talked about using him, which was kind of similar to TCU, but receiver, slot receiver, kick return, punt return, getting him the ball in a variety of ways. And he's been one of the more exciting pass catchers on the 7-on-7 circuit, seeing him a couple times in some loaded tournaments. He's been a difference maker, catching the ball downfield, making plays in traffic. And he's a 10,600 meter dash guy that rushed for nearly 3,000 yards as a junior. He's a prolific runner, checks all the boxes, and he's going to Louisville. And this is a special class for Scott Satterfield and company as they add Reuben Owens to DeAndre Moore and Pierce Clarkson. Reuben Owens' dad called that the big 3. They also have a touted corner, Aaron Williams, in the fold. And, I'm not sure that Louisville's done from this big weekend. The number 4 interior offensive lineman in the country, Madden Sanker. Louisville's done an excellent job with him. Nathaniel Ray Joseph, maybe the most dynamic slot guy after Zachariah Branch in this class. Louisville, there was some Miami buzz when he decommitted from Clemson, but if he picked Louisville, as I said in an earlier show, would not be surprised. And there's a couple offensive linemen I like them for. Luke Burgess, a 6'7.5", 290-pound monster. You're not going to find an offensive lineman prettier on the hoof than Luke Burgess, who plays for one of the more hard-nosed high school football programs in the Midwest, the New Palestine. He also took officials to North Carolina and Florida State. But I like the way it's lining up for Louisville, just 2 hours down the road from Indianapolis. Might even be a little closer from the suburb that he lives in. And I also like him for Jordan Church out of IMG Academy, a big offensive lineman that they've prioritized as long as anybody. And so those crystal balls are in play. They could beat Tennessee for linebacker Jeremiah Lander. That's one that they're hot and heavy on. I think I like LSU for Kyle Parker, a receiver that visited over the weekend, but don't hold me to that. Things can change. Speaking of things that can change, let's go to the number 2 running back in the country. Reuben Owens is out. He's off the board right now, although a couple people called me and said, we're not going to rule out Texas A&M. Now, Reuben Owens tweeted he's not taking any more visits other than the Louisville, but if you follow recruiting for a long time, things change. We'll see what happens. We'll monitor that one. The Aggies are in that one. The Aggies are also in it for Cedric Baxter Jr., and so is Texas. I think that's kind of 1A and 1B right now for the Orlando Edgewater standout that's also looking at Florida, Miami, and Alabama. And they want to – he's going to be at Texas A&M this weekend. I took his official visit to Texas earlier this month. Tashard Choice has done an excellent job recruiting Cedric Baxter, who's 6'1", 215 pounds, rushed for almost 2,000 yards and 26 touchdowns. As a junior, really emerged as one of the premier backs in America. My gut is that Texas is the one to beat right now. We'll see what happens with this visit with A&M this weekend. He also took a recent visit to Florida. The Gators, he's certainly seen them a lot. And then I know that he loved the way Miami practiced when he went and saw them in the spring, and Kevin Smith's doing a nice job. And then certainly Alabama's pedigree at the position and just the program in general speak to him. But I could see this Sunshine State standout in the Lone Star State visiting Texas A&M this weekend. But I'd probably give Texas 1A, Texas A&M 1B going into that visit. Let's stay in the state of Texas. Look at the number 1 recruit in that state. He's the number 1 defensive lineman in the country, David Hicks out of Katy. He's playing at Paytow High School there, 6'4", 270 pounds. My crystal ball is on Texas A&M for him. I've had it on the Aggies for quite a while. First time I'm actually thinking about changing it is coming off this official visit to Oregon. I think that his dad told me it was a home run visit. It was a hell of a visit. And what Oregon's got going on with Coach Lanning and Coach Lupoy and those guys there, I think that David Hicks had a fantastic time in Eugene. I think his dad had a fantastic time in Eugene. And Oregon really moved the needle and should not be discounted after 2 visits now to campus. Now, his dad told me that a decision is not imminent. Certainly remains a priority for Texas A&M. Oklahoma's been in there recruiting him hard. He's been to Miami a couple times. But I'm buying that Oregon has real momentum right now with David Hicks. And then, we saw Carnell Tate and Brandon Innes come off the board this week, our number 2 and number 3 receivers in the country, both to Ohio State. Let's talk about Hykeem Williams. He's the number 5 receiver in the top 247. He just visited Georgia. He's been to A&M earlier this month, and that is going to be a slobber knocker on the trail between these two. I think that they're both it's just going to be a prize fight, a slugfest for him that's going to go all the way to December. And I think momentum's going to go back and forth in this one. The crystal ball is on A&M, but no one should discount Georgia. Georgia's done a terrific job in that recruitment as well. I could see him at either SEC school, but Hykeem Williams, that'll be one of the more fun recruitments to watch over the next 4 or 5 months. It'll be one of the names that we're talking about the most going into the early signing period. He'll be a regular mention, I'm sure, on Wiltfong Whiparounds for months to come. So we appreciate you tuning in and checking out this episode. Again, I'm your host, Steve Wiltfong. We got Chris and Jason behind the scenes getting this show up and running. I appreciate y'all and look forward to catching you guys on the next one.